Well, hello there, folks. Welcome to Miyagi Mornings, episode 126. And as you can tell by my shirt, we're going to talk about big tech censorship today. But we're going to do it in a way that is, highly optimistic, friends and neighbors. I want to start out with something. It's not going to be today, maybe just a little bit of it, but there is a Jack rant coming. It will either be a Miyagi Mornings or more likely it'll be on a podcast at thesurvivalpodcast.com where I'm about to thump some people in the head. I am sick of some of you sons of bitches in your defeatist language. I really am. I'm tired of it. And that's why I'm bringing you optimism today. But I mean, I have gotten involved in so many other communities as guest speakers and stuff like that. I've been on John Bush's The Greater Reset, and so that makes me privy to like chats and stuff like that. I just did the Dollar Vigilante Summit with Jeff Berwick, and all these communities that are anarcho, libertarian, and fighting for liberty. And my God, the defeatist language you people have. It'll never work. A bunch of freaking Eeyores. Get off your ass and get things done. Now, I will save the real ass thumping, and it is coming, folks, for later. I want to go with optimism today. And optimism about something that seems very negative and very much like we're being defeated. Big tech censorship. That's why the Gulag shirt is on today, right? The combat cock from John Willis over at SOE Tactical Gear Gulag. Right? Not Google, Gulag. All right. So, I think people are completely misunderstanding the reality on the ground of the fact that if I go find an article written by a credible news source, not some crazy quack blog, citing a valid medical study, and I put it on Facebook, they censor it and take it down or put giant warning labels on it, right? Or that Twitter does the same thing. Or if I mention exactly word for word the verbiage inside a study that is, published on NIH on ScrewTube here, run by the Gulag, they'll take the video down. I think people are completely misinterpreting what that means. I want to give you a quote, and when you hear it, you're going to be like, it's not quite right, and Ghandi said it. You would be wrong on both things. So here it is. And if you doubt me, do the research for yourself. Research tends to be quite valuable. We learn things when we do research instead of just think we know what we know. The quote is, first they ignore you, then they ridicule you. Then they attack you and want to burn you, and then they build monuments to you. A lot of people have attributed that to Ghandi and changed it and cleaned it up, make it a little less clunky. First they ignore you, then they mock you, then they fight you, and then you win, right? And there's been lots of people who've said lots of things like that. And do you know why? Because it's true. Because it's true. So if you think about this, every single movement that was truly like a grassroots individual movement that real individual people actually made happen has followed this same curve. And it is very much what Ghandi did. And of course, here's why people misattribute quotes, by the way. It just gives the quote more authority. If I tell you that Nicholas Klein said that, you're like, what? It was involving a garment makers protest, I think in New York. Like, it was so what? But it's right, right? But Gandhi's movement very much followed this. It was ignored, mocked, attacked, and then wins. And that's what's going on today. They don't silence you. They don't take down your posts. Some of you guys, like, it's one thing when I get censored, like with, 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, or like I've got a page on Facebook with 120,000 followers. Right? It's one thing when I get censored. These people have millions of followers. It's another thing when they get censored. When you have like your mom, your dad, your uncle, your cousin, and your uncle's former roommate following you on Facebook, and you share something, and you get smacked down and you get censored, that's a totally different reality. See, what they did is they ignored us, then they mocked us. You're all a bunch of tin hat crazy, no, right? And then they attacked first people way bigger than me. I mean, and this is how you don't see it until it's like completely there. It's like, again, very slowly and then very quickly, right? Slowly at first and then overnight. So people are like, it was like, the Alex Joneses of the world or whatever. And okay, fine. And I was not fine with that. But I still didn't see how bad it really was because, well, it didn't affect me. And they went down to how many people you were reaching in their fight. And so you try to silence what you perceive as the leadership because you have no idea what you're dealing with, by the way. So just because somebody has a bunch of subscribers or reaches a bunch of people doesn't necessarily mean that they're a leader in this or that they're actually an effective soldier in this war, right? So, but you hit those and then, like, it actually gets worse. Shit, what have we done? So then you go after, like, you know, the Jack Spirkos and the Temples and stuff like that, right? And you go at, like, you know, people that are bigger, but they're more in the satire world, like JP Sears. Like, then you go after those people. And then, like, it gets worse, right? There's more people sharing more information. There's people taking all the content we produce and replicating it somewhere else that your filters haven't figured out yet. You know, because, like, if you embed a video on a page and don't put a bunch of text about the subject, your little Facebook smart algorithm, Zuckercock, doesn't work. So then it's everywhere all at once. And then you have to start going Nazi. And you have to start trying to shut everybody up. But here's the problem. You built a business model in a economy that requires growth at all costs. This is the trap they've sprung for themselves, big tech anyway. Government's got their own trap. We'll get to that later, right? Where you should stop being afraid. Bill Gates is going to steal my chickens. If Bill Gates steals your chickens, you deserve to have your chicken stolen. Let me let that go. God, I just want to freaking nail you in the head. Macho Man Savage elbow in the head style, man. All right, where was I? You know, so now what you have is this business model. Understand that the way the modern economy works, if a company makes billions of dollars, but makes a little bit money than they made last year, and has a little bit less revenue than they had last year, they have a problem. If they do that for 2 consecutive years, they have a massive problem. If they do that 3 consecutive years, they're on the way to being out of business or bought out by somebody that can reverse the trend. This makes no sense for humanity, by the way. I'm not saying this is a good thing or this is the way things should be. Like many times, I'm talking about the way things are. If you are a publicly traded company, you must grow or you will be punished. So it's one thing when you're thumping people with a few million subscribers, but all their people are like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So they stay. And then you start hitting the lower ranks of the people that are content creators like me, and then, but they're still, what are you going to do? But when they start sharing stories with their Aunt Edna and it can't be seen, and they're like, wait a minute, I got this from Yahoo News, or I got this from The Guardian, or I got this this is from freaking MSNBC, for God's sakes. This couldn't be more mainstream. This is a link to an NIH study. And you start censoring them, they start going, you know what? Maybe I better do something. And they start looking out at the rest of the world, and they go, holy shit, technology's evolving. There's places where I can go be free, that I can speak my mind. And they start to realize something. Well, it's always hard to move and start over. You know, even in the real world, you have to move. It's hard. It's often the only way to grow. When you realize that all the people around you are effing zombies, and people are like, well, I'm staying on Facebook because I'm trying to wake up the masses. You're not going to wake up the masses. The masses have to wake up for themselves. You can't red pill anybody. Right, if you want to use that term. People have to seek out, pick up, and swallow the red pill all by themselves. But you know, information helps check it. Yes, but not when it's censored. Not when they can't see it. Not when you think you've shared it. But nobody that's following you sees it, because that's the other way they're fighting you guys, right? They're fighting you guys another way. I didn't get censored. Okay, go talk to people you know IRL, in real life, right? If you're too old to know what that means, IRL. And say, hey, I shared this, and this like last week. Did you see it? Don't be surprised when they're like, oh no, I didn't know you put that. I didn't see it. It's called shadow banning. All of these Gestapo gulag tactics are not the mark of an enemy that is in command and winning the war. When you are winning a war by taking out strategic infrastructure, like if you're actually, I'm talking a physical war here, you go to war with a country And you're winning that war because you're taking out communications towers and oil pipelines and bridges and roads. And you have a bunch of foot soldiers running around in the desert. You just leave them there to starve. You don't worry about them. When you start going into hand-to-hand, bayonet-locked combat with the enemy's foot soldiers, it's because you're not winning the war. It's because you're not winning the war. And this is a war. And they're losing. It's very hard to see that right now. But every single movement like this starts with a few people, and a few more people, and a few more people, until they start to make a difference. And then when the enemy begins to attack people who are simply trying to live a peaceful life, it starts to sway and change public opinion. And we now have gone from, and I don't pick on the millennials, but a generation of the weakest, weak sauce human beings that society has ever churned out, except for maybe some of the generations during the Roman Empire. And at least they were a little bit tougher because the landscape they lived in tended that they had to be. But like the most emotionally weak, easily influenced generation on history. And that doesn't mean there's not a lot of tough-ass, liberty-oriented millennials, but the majority of that generation is gone. You have two things going on right now that are interesting and kind of buck a little bit of the fourth turning. Gen X is not shutting up and going away now, are we? Are we? And we're the uncles and the great-uncles and the grandparents of that next generation. And this generation of kids that are growing up, and you're all worried, they're going to teach them critical race theory, they're going to teach them this. I want you to think back to school and anything that if you're Gen X especially, anything that they ideologically tried to put into your little brain, what did you do? You resisted. This is the mistake tyrants always make. They push too hard, and they push too fast once they realize they have the problem. However, they always make the mistake of not realizing they have the problem because they have so much power, they believe for so long, that there's no way anybody can defeat them. And by the time they realize the problem they have, think of it like bees. If you have one bee sting you think about more like wasps. We don't die when we sting. We can sting again and again and again and again. So if you have one wasp sting you, you might get stung a time or two or a time or three. But if you go up under like a deck or something and you see a little nest of wasps and the wasps have been flying around and you poke it, you could have a problem. But if you find out there's actually like a whole bunch of nests down there, and while you're swatting at the dozen or so wasps, you whack a big old freaking hornet's nest about this big, now you're screwed. What did I tell you about social media, folks? Long time ago. We do not need to have a hive. We need to be a swarm. See those hornets? We've also used ants to describe like preparedness and things like that in the liberty movement. Ants, hornets, bees, all of them. They're all like us in that they build their home wherever the hell they want. They do not ask your permission. And they largely ignore you if you leave them alone. But there's a point where if you've kicked the mound, or you've poked the hive, or you've poked the comb or the nest too many times, you can't turn it off. Hell is unleashed. And the only thing you can do then is run and hide. And that's a metaphor. But it's a good one for what's going on right now. The fact that they're silencing a little old lady from Topeka, Kansas, who's sharing a story about an election audit, instead of like pointing out, like, here's why it's wrong, or here's why I think it's wrong, or here's where we disagree, or allowing that discourse to take place. I mean, anybody that posts anything like this on Facebook or Twithead or whatever it is, immediately somebody shows up and tells them how stupid they are, and then they have a debate. Like, the fact that they don't even want to let the debate play out means you're losing. Like I started off with, stop being defeatist, and I know most of you that listen to me, you're not. I'm actually so proud. I mean, if you took that wrong when I was saying that, like, I'm speaking to the general liberty, supposed liberty, defeatist community out there, right? Like, I guess maybe I was, as much as I've always been proud of my community and my people, as much as it does my heart good whenever I do an in real life workshop and I have 50, 60, 80 people stay at my home for a week, because I actually do that for those that don't know who I am, and I meet people, I never hear this shit. I never hear, well, I would do this, but they won't let me. And I think part of it is because, like, you know who I am, and you know if you send me an email like that, you're going to get a beating. But God help you, if you travel all the way to my backyard to give me that shit, you're going to get just, like, tattooed on the forehead, man. Like, you got to get out of that. But I think in general, like, just the way this community's been built, and it's not been built by me, it's been built by everybody in it. That, like, that's just not something we do. We don't do defeat at TSP, man. We don't do it. But as I've looked out into these other communities, and there's a lot of great things about them, don't get me wrong. Good Lord, the verbal vomit of defeatism. Man, when I was doing Dollar Vigilante Summit, I expected, like, to be, like, surrounded by people that believed in their own power. And I was. But about 25 to 30% of those people, I don't even know what they were doing there. They were so defeatist, you'd have thought they already lost. Do not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, folks. We're at a point now where the momentum is shifting. Sites like Float, for instance, are going to become one of the dominant players in social media. I absolutely believe that, because I'm looking not at just who the people are, but the tech they're developing. And people are like, well, it's all just libertarians and anarchists. So? Facebook started all it was is dudes trying to score. Every new community starts on a thing. And it is population that breeds excitement, that brings diversity. Every freaking social media site that's become successful started out very niche. Twitter was nothing but a bunch of freaking marketers trying to figure out how to make money with something that was nothing but kind of like instant messaging and kind of like email. It didn't really do shit. That's all it was. Look at it now. Look at it now. Reddit, same kind of shit. It was all tech nerds, right? MySpace was pretty much, I know it seems like a bad example, but that's just because, well, Facebook came. But MySpace started out, it was just musics and bands. Everything that ever succeeded started out in a niche. But I want to say something. What is a platform going to look like when the niche that starts it are people like you and me? I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to be part of it. And please follow me on these alternative platforms, especially Float. And if you're going to use defeatist language with me, just expect, a Randy Macho Man Savage style elbow to the forehead. Because frankly, I think you need it. We're winning it, and they're silencing you because your voice is powerful, not because it's weak. Take care, guys. I'll be back tomorrow.